right. I've just started the live chat. Right now, it's the blank window. Gonna kind of transition from this, just seeing as people may come in and seeing who shows up. So it's a Sunday afternoon. Not sure if people are going to be here or not, but here we go. So anyway, I've got the live chat up. We'll get started soon. For those of you who are watching this on replay, timestamps down below will tell you when we actually get into the meat of it. But right now, it's just kind of an open thing. And welcome, Everything Trains. Welcome, and we're just seeing everything coming in. My own. Hi, Bob. Were you preaching this morning, Bob? See, there's a few of us clergy here on in the model railroading community, so it's good to see everybody, and so this is just kind of like seeing how everything turns out, and I have Will Kling as one of my moderators, and we're gonna see how this pans out. Welcome, Isaac. Just saying hi to everybody. Now, there may be mayhem tonight. It really depends on my daughter's upstairs and my son is upstairs, and who knows, that they might get bored with whatever they're doing and suddenly invade the space. So just be warned. We may see how this goes. So we can have a little bit of fun today, and just kind of getting into it. One of the things that as we go through, I do have. You might want to have a pen and paper, because we're talking about premixes versus homebrews, and there are some homebrew recipes that I have. Hey, Mike. And yes, and it doesn't matter your scale. So. We have HO scale. We have, of course, I'm an N scaler, but I've done HO scale pieces as well. So we're kind of in place. You will see cats walking down up and down, and we get to see how everything goes tonight. So before we get started, just to kind of get things going in the chat, and I'm going to ask this a couple of times as people come in, is when we talk about homebrew versus premix, what are some questions that you might have? Kind of put them over in chat. I mean, the chat window is right over here for me. So if you see me looking off, I'm trying to catch up with everything, but I might miss stuff. And so, if just try and making sure that the questions get highlighted, hopefully I can address that. Anything that I miss, I usually try to go back through the live chat after everything. Oh, here's a silly thing. Can everybody hear me? And do I sound normal, or do I sound like a teenage boy? So, well. No worry. Everything trains. I mean, if you're looking on where to start, I do have a where do I start video, but please sit in for this one, because some of the background on this you're gonna find with work well. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, along with some kind of caveats. Oh, good. All right. So the sound is looking good. Everything's sounding normal. Excellent. So. Yeah, and actually, Bob, just to let you know, and I'm going to be sharing this with the community. Bob Wallace on the chat is a friend of mine, fellow clergy living down in Lethbridge. It was actually him. Do you remember the video of the tour that we did a couple of weeks ago? Well, that's his club, and so Bob, great to see you, and. Today was my last Sunday prior to my vacation, and I'm going to do a little bit more details into that. But I'm heading on vacation fairly soon. Anyway, I'm just going to just play up the intro sequence, and hopefully we will go from there. So see you on the other side. there. Welcome everybody. I think we have we're just getting everything in place, and I just want to make sure that we have everything in place. Welcome, and we have everybody coming in and chatting. At least according to the window that I have about 13 or so here. But as we welcome people in, one of the things that I wanted to do before we actually get into the material of the layout, I have a couple of unboxings to do because, well, I've been sent some more commissions, and so now my understanding is both of these are N scale commissions. But here, let's switch out to the to a larger screen so you can see some of that. This is one that I've actually received from my my newest moderator, from Will Kling, and I've got to angle this in such a way that it doesn't reflect the window. But this is an S4 that is going to get some steel mill treatment, and so that I'm very much looking forward to working with this one. Will has sent me all kinds of things, including some decals and some brass parts, which is going to be fun, and so that's one, and the other one just arrived actually a couple days ago. So this is my first time actually opening the box, and this is from Austin Malcolm, and so Austin, this is carefully bubble wrapped, and I don't have anything to properly open this with. This is very well sealed. This is an exact rail gondola, and very specifically, Austin has a very unique graffiti pattern that he wants to see on it, and that's really what this is going to be. And I'm just checking the box because he's also sent me some decals in this, so it's very well sealed. If I happen to get some scissors before the end of the show, I can pop this open and have you take a look at that. But it's, so that's a couple of projects. Unfortunately, I don't have any sort of I don't have a blade nearby, so I can't fully pop that open. By the way, if anybody does a live chat right now, all I've got is the whistle. But Megan's upstairs, and she's threatened to come downstairs with her eyeshadow, like she did last time. And so anyway, so in the meantime, this is kind of my my live chat or my super chat. If anybody ever sends me one of those. And then we can go there. Thanks, Bill. Good to know that the sound is working. I'm just going to transition this back to the live chat. I just want to make sure that okay, interesting. So we've got 19. Good to see it is good to see everybody. Now, just as almost like a show. Oh, all right. Everything trains. Thank you. There's my first live chat, but it's a threat. Megan, I'm a little concerned that Megan may come down with her own ideas. I just want to make sure that I'm we're all there. So so anyway, thank you very much, Everything Trains, for that first little live chat. Welcome, Norman Rowe. Okay, so everybody's starting to come in now. What I wanted to do is today, in many respects, one of the reasons why I'm doing the live chat quite often, you can tell when I've had a very busy week or a very busy time, is that I tend to move to a live chat rather than putting out a video. And this July, which is supposed to be relaxing and less busy, has been anything but, at least work-wise. And so it's been extremely busy. And so as a result, I've got lots of footage, I've got some projects coming up, but I haven't been able to do anything. And I go on vacation as of Wednesday. So this is going to be my last video of any sort until about August 25th. I'm officially away. I'm going to be away for a little while. I won't have a lot of access to the computer and the like, and so It's kind of in and out, so I can't necessarily guarantee that. But towards the end of August, I've got a couple of things. You might have noticed a Cloverdale rail. A little while ago, I showed you the completed car, his passenger car, which is an HO scale. I have 148 gigabytes worth of footage on that passenger car alone. That one took me quite a while to do. So that one, it's going to take a lot of editing to get that one in place. Plus, Florent Bagnier, who I've already weathered that the Rock Island locomotive for. He's already that's already done, but he sent me two more, which is one Union Pacific and one Southern Pacific. And if you go over to my Patreon page, you can actually see just some snapshots of where it's at. Like, I've done a little bit more since then. The locomotives are nearly done, and they're going to be going home to him within a handful of days. And I've got the footage from that, and I'm going to be doing a video for the Union Pacific and the Southern Pacific separately, even though I did them more or less at the same time. So that's kind of part of that. So, but those videos will come out after I'm back from my vacation. So things are coming along and progressing well with that. So anyway, we're 10 minutes in, and the whole point of doing this particular video was to, oh yeah, Norman, lots of editing. But the whole point of doing this particular video was to talk a little bit about, should you use a premixed weathering product, or should you brew your own? And I've seen a lot of discussion on this, and so we're going to talk about the merits of both, and wanting to really kind of get into that. I have a couple of just some examples here that I'll be kind of bringing up and talking about. And so what I want to do is I just need to get these proper frames set up that I can do this. And the first thing is to bring up my little chalkboard here, and then I'm going to go into the and then kind of so I can work back and forth between these two slides. I'm still getting used to the OBS program, but we can kind of get started with this. So just like, the nice thing is that in this window you can you'll be able to see the chat window there. And I wanted to kind of get a sense of, I'm going to get into the definitions of whether or not we work with a premix or homebrew, and I'm really hoping that this works with it. Is that when we're working with the question is premix and homebrew, I'm going to get into some definitions in a second. But really, prior to the getting into place, we have prior to 2000. A lot of the times, most of the stuff that was available was you were left to homebrew. But I want to kind of get into a little bit of history. Is that honestly, if you're using a paint of any kind, you're actually using a premix. Because really, the history of painting, and I mean, I am not an art historian. This is something that I've been sort of picking up along the way. But I am not an art historian. But there are some kind of things that I've learned along the way. But when it comes to painting, it used to be that painters mix their own, and the reason that the 1866 label is there is that's when Sherwin-Williams started creating pre-mixed paints. Now, apparently there was a pigment mill that was created somewhere around the 1718 mark. And welcome, Vinny. Good to see you here. But anyway, prior to 1866, I mean, what homebrew meant was you literally made the paints from the ground, like right from the pigments on up, and so, in some respects, when we talk about premix versus homebrew, everything that we use today is a premix, but we've kind of narrowed that definition a little bit, and I'll get into this. So I guess the question is when it comes to a premix or a homebrew, how old school do you really want to go? But I don't think we necessarily have to go back to pre 1866 for that. But the whole point of painting and weathering, of course, is we're trying to create the illusion of weathering. And there's Megan. Did you take care of Ian?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. We're just making sure that Ian's looked after. So everything that we do, from straight up paints to the neatest, latest, greatest weathering product, everything are all about creating the illusion of size. And I've said this before: the art of weathering is not about making a small model look dirty. The whole point is making a small model look big. So you may remember. Oh yes, thank you on the Megan just pointed out the just hopped over 1,700 subscribers. Wow. I'm almost a year into this, and I started with 38. Anyway, back to the topic. The Everything that we do when it comes to weathering is to create the illusion not of making something dirty, but to make it look big, and that's really part of what we're trying to do here. Everything that we do, all the methods that we use, everything that I'm trying to do here, is to create the illusion of something big. So that's really kind of where this is kind of where I'm trying to go with this. So anyway, that's kind of the pattern and the flow of this. And what we're trying to do is to create that illusion. So. And as I said, unless you're actually grinding your own pigments and mixing your own binders, you are using a premixed product. I mean, I kind of got ahead of myself there, but that's the thing to kind of keep in mind. Oh yes, Aloha Milton, thank you very much. Hit like if you haven't already. Subscribe. Just because you can see everything that's coming up, and you have commentary here from my daughter just off screen. So anyway, so what I wanted to do is go into that creating the illusion of creating the illusion, and so what I wanted to do is talk a little bit the definitions that I'm using today. As I said, technically everything we do is a premix, like right from the paint on up. If you buy paint in a bottle, like this golden acrylics bottle, that's a premixed paint. I'm not going out and kind of scraping concrete or grinding up flowers or something like that to create the pigments and the like. So. Oh, Aloha Milton. Now you are well advanced in me, just in terms of actually grinding and making your own pigments. Now here's a little thing. How many of you have heard of a guy by the name of Rob Arsenault? Rob Arsenault is, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things, technically a neighbor of mine. He lives in Edmonton, which is about a 3-hour drive north of here, and he runs a company called Weather My Trains, and does this is his business. That's what he does. And the paints that he uses are these ones, the golden acrylics, and he mixes his own colors from primaries mostly, and so because he can get the kind of control that he wants. But ultimately, the whole idea is a premixed product is something that has been created for modelers to quickly create an illusion. Where on the other hand, a homebrew is something that you are kind of you're kind of literally brewing at home, and so that's like taking an oil paint and mixing it with some thinner and the like and the like. So. So. Aloha Milton, thank you very much for your comment. I mean, the thing is, your training in art school is certainly more than what I have. I know how much I don't know, really, and So we go with that. Have I, as someone, Megan just pointed out some questions along the way. There's one, have I been to the Amherst Train Show in Springfield? The answer is no, I haven't. Part of it is distance and time available. So that's part of it. And now we have a cat that's just shown up. Thanks, Megan. So anyway, I need. So now the other thing that I wanted to talk about is a hybrid. Is you're using a premixed product, but you're actually doing more with it than its original intended use. I'm about to give some examples of that. So, for example, here are some basic homebrews, and these count as recipes, by the way, is actually doing things, and you've probably heard of these. These are shaving a pastel to create a weathering powder. Yes, a very floofy cat. All right. The other thing is, of course, the alcohol India ink wash, where you take a bottle of rubbing alcohol and put a couple drops of ink in it, and you've suddenly got yourself a wash. And then also a pin wash in thinning down an oil paint. So you can take just say an oil paint like this yellow ochre, and thin it down, and you've got yourself a wash. And that's kind of a basic example of a homebrew. So I'm not sure if Georgia would appreciate being weathered. I think she's well weathered on her own. So, but anyway, and of course the premix washes, for example. I mean, I've got several premixes here. Here's a old school. Is that this is the original MIG Productions before they were in essence taken subsumed under AK Interactive. This was the original weathering products company in some respects, and these products are still available, but they are now made by and distributed by AK Interactive, and so there's these ones. The other one are the Abteilung 502 oils, which at one point were under MIG Productions. I think AK Interactive has those, and then of course these the oil brushers. That I reviewed just a couple of weeks back, and so these ones again are examples of effectively what are premixed weathering products.
We'll be reviewing more stuff soon.
Yeah, and apparently I'm going to be reviewing some more stuff soon. So, we'll more on that later. Actually, Megan, there is the weathering book on the counter. Could you go grab that for me, please? But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is doing things like basically what are hybrid. It's basically taking a premix wash, like for example, this is Starship Filth, and Starship Filth as an oil paint. If you thin it down, that's kind of a hybrid homebrew, because you're using something that's designed for weathering, but you're actually you're thinning it down to create a specific wash, and so that's kind of most of the time. A lot of what we're doing is kind of hybrids. So clear as mud so far. And actually one of the neat things is that here's something interesting. This oil brusher here. That's the wrong one. Pulled the wrong one out. This oil brusher here that comes in that Starship set actually happens to be, that is Starship Filth. So you actually now have the same product in two different lines from two different companies, but it is the same stuff. Apparently, it's made at the same factory. Don't say that out too loud. So, but yeah, if you get this Starship oil brusher set, you get Starship Filth, and it's actually thinned down to a pretty nice consistency. It's about the same consistency as what you get in a tube of acrylic paint. And then you have then some of the other ones going back to some of the. And then there's the others, and I'm not entirely sure how quite to work it. I seem to have lost my ability to. Let's just transition this back, and there we go. Now we're moving to a blank slide. All right. So what I want to, so actually, before I get into the pros and cons, Ralph, I saw you, Ralph Renzetti, the Mudfather himself, has more homebrews, has forgotten more homebrews that I've learned, because he's been doing this a lot longer than many of us have, and so we wanted to kind of work with that, and of course there's some of the new ones, like of course with the last live stream I was demonstrating these contrast paints from Games Workshop. My daughter did that. How long did this take you? Okay, see this wolf right here?
I'm not done it.
She's not done. She still has to do the teeth, but it took her 10 minutes to create this wolf. Using the contrast paints, base included, and like
It took longer to like prime it and get the
yeah, and so that was Megan using these contrast paints. Now that having been said, Megan is actually really good. She is at 13, about where I was when I was 23. So it actually she's further ahead than that, and she is going to be a much better painter than I currently am. So this wolf is as an example of how those contrast paints work. It's fairly simple application, and they're definitely worth checking out, especially on miniatures and figures. Whereas some of these other things are more, of course, you're looking for large flat surfaces, and that's where oils and things get a little bit better. So, one of the things when it comes to homebrew, like I've got a couple to share with you, but I don't have the link. But Ralph, I'm going to try and get that link for you on Model Railroading Live. A little while ago, Ralph did a whole thing on his entire weathering process, like step by step, and fairly lengthy videos with this, but specifically, and I know I've mentioned this before, is using water mixable oils, gouache paints, and microsol as to create a grime wash. That's now I need to let him describe that one to you, and there is a video of how he did it. That's an example of a homebrew that I think gets some really neat results. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons, and I know that Ralph will kind of call me on this if I don't get this right. That the pros to this is, of course, when you do a homebrew, you potentially have more control over the final result if you practice it and know what you're doing. Even if you don't know what you're doing, I mean, just it's the practice of it. It's trying to work with it, and sometimes that homebrew is as simple as taking a basic oil paint and just simply thinning it down and creating a wash. Now, usually when I homebrew my own stuff, I make enough for what I'm using at the time. There are others who actually create a jar of something and make it as a homebrew. For example, here's another recipe. You might want to write this one down. Is the future floor finish, and unfortunately it's constantly changing names. But anyway, one of them is called Magic Wash, and this is particularly something that has gotten a little bit of traction amongst miniature modelers in particular, of creating a wash that looks really good. And if you're doing anything like 1/100th scale miniatures, or like, whether like N scale and the like, it does work really quite well. But what Magic Wash is, it's actually pretty simple. It's 1 part future to 4 parts water. So again, 1 part future, 4 parts water, and then you add in just a little bit of pigment. So for those of you who do the India ink alcohol wash, this is actually a substitute for that you can add in ink to the 1 part future, 4 parts 4 parts water, and then add in a little bit of ink, and that actually creates a wash. Now the caveat is it makes it really shiny. You have to use a dull coat or some sort of matte varnish to kill the shine, because it works really well, but it just makes it very, very shiny, and it's kind of a hard gloss on it. So that's another example of a homebrew recipe. Now, you might notice it says potentially more cost effective when you basically buy your own paints and mix your own. I put a little star beside that because it's not always the case, and I'm going to get back to that in a little bit. So that's one of the cost effectiveness is something that is often put forward as to why it's better to brew your own. I'm going to challenge that a little bit, because it may be true in some circumstances, but it might not be in others. So I just wanted to kind of work with that. So the downfall with this is that when you're doing a homebrew, quite often it requires a lot more materials, and especially like you might need to buy a few more things rather than just kind of one product. And the other big con to that is consistency, like how well something works on one model. If you brew it again, you're not necessarily getting the exact same match on the next model. And so as a result, some of these homebrew things have a bit of a higher learning curve. I mean, once you're there and you know what you're doing with it, it is fairly straightforward. So there's a bit of advice from Ralph Renzetti: save your empty Tamiya bottles. For your homebrew will last longer. That's actually a good idea, Ralph, because I've got about 15 bottles downstairs that I was thinking of taking to the chemical recycling depot, and I think I'm going to follow your advice and try and get those cleaned out, and actually kind of hold them for some of my own homebrews, especially if I'm going to be trying and making a few of those. So that's a very, very good piece of advice. And a few more people have come in. Welcome. But the one thing about doing the homebrew stuff is they can have a bit of a higher learning curve, because if you don't quite know what the mix is and things like that, it can be kind of harder to do that out of the gate. But again, there's sort of some things that might with that. So again, follow Ralph's advice there on the on how to get those Tamiya bottles cleaned out. I've done a little bit more experimenting with the AK Interactive paints that I have. They are very definitely allergic to water of any kind. I'm not sure why, but as soon as water hits it, they will gum up. So you need to thin them with alcohol. Like, you can clean them with alcohol or with lacquer thinner, or I've just recently acquired AK Interactive's own multi-purpose thinner, and that works quite well. But yeah, don't mix them with water at all. The clear stuff, any of it, just keep it to alcohol or lacquer, and otherwise they're gonna gum up on you. All right, but we're not talking about the paints. So when it comes to the premix stuff, now keep in mind, this is my personal experience. So your experience with this might be a little different. Is that out of the package, I find that if I'm looking for something that's kind of consistent across several places, this is where the premix stuff really shines. And keep in mind, now this is something I don't have a slide for. A premixed weathering product is something that has been developed by a modeler for a modeler, and they've come up with their own recipe, and what they've done is they bottled it and decided to sell it. And so the people who've produced this, who've created this stuff, are people who really are passionate about modeling and want to be able to share that with you. So that becomes something that you can kind of keep in mind. Ralph, I'm talking about their acrylic lacquers. If it's the AK Interact, it's the Real Color line, and so they do thin really well with lacquers, and they do thin really well with alcohol, but not with water at all. I haven't tried different types of mineral spirits, but I do know that at least with the Tamiya lacquer, they work fine, and their own high compatibility thinner is what they call it. Works really well. Okay, and then of course the chat is just is going by reasonably quickly. I'm kind of hoping that um, so. Oh yeah, I'm discovering that the alerts for live streams don't necessarily kick in as well. And you know, sorry about that. That seems to be a YouTube thing. Anyway, back to the pros and cons. One of the other things is with using a premix is that you get faster results. I have to say when I use these oil brushers, and actually I might be able to do a quick little demonstration on how quickly I can actually use it. We've got the oil brusher here, and just the all I have to do is take it out like this, and you know it's like a mascara bottle. You just dab it on the model, and you can either dab it on the model, or what I did just recently is I wanted to try dry brushing, and dry brushing with oils is a little more difficult, but this I was actually able to put on my palette, just a couple small drops, mix it with another color. On the palette, and then brush most of that off, and then do a very light dry brush on a piece that I was working on. And then dry brushes can tend to be grainy, but because it was oils, I could come back about 5 minutes later and then just use a completely dry brush to smooth it out. Worked really, really well, just because I could just use this as the applicator. And now, if there's a particular drawback to this, is that when you pull this out, there's little things that actually keep most of the paint in the bottle. You can apply it directly. It does work really well, but if you're like me and like to choke up on the brush quite a bit, it can be a little bit more trouble for precision application. In that case, I might transfer it to a palette or something like that. But really, as far as that's concerned, these things, I'm a convert. I really am. These are amazing things as a potential tool in the arsenal. And so these ones, faster results. I was able to do a dot fade using the oil brushers on these N-scale locomotives that I'm currently working on. It took me less than half the time to do the dot fade technique with that than it did to set up, do the dot fade, and then clean everything up just using these standard oil paints. Now, will they replace the oil paints? No, but they're something that, here's an example of a premix that does work really quite well. Oh, there's a blank dot there, and the one of the cons to the premix is they're potentially more expensive. The oil brushers are the exception. That depending upon where you look at it. Now, granted, this tube will last longer than this bottle, but this bottle, you can get 3 of these for about the price of one of these. Now that depends on where you shop. Like, you can probably find a better deal for it. If you shop around on Amazon, you can use I've got some links down below. You can use those kind of as a starting point, and then go from there. But the premix weathering products, one of the critiques, of course, is that they're more expensive. But again, I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming slide. So, this particular one is actually, before I get to that, do we have any questions before getting onto the more the issues of is everybody clear on the premix or the home brews? And I'm curious to see where people's preferences are. Like, do you primarily use home brews? Do you use premix? Are you like me and use some kind of a mix of the two in the middle? Just put that down in chat. I'd be curious to see where you're at with that. But anyway, of course, one of the things leveled at premix products like this is that they're more expensive. That there's for example, inside this, it's a lot of thinner and not a lot of pigment. And at least when I got this 10 years ago, because of exchange rates and things like that, this came out at $18 Canadian. Now, the prices have changed and dropped since then, but certainly looking at that's kind of a little bit of sticker shock. And I could brew my own for something like that. But I bought it anyway, and I've been very happy with it. And one of the things, and again, just I need to give kudos to Ralph Renzetti on this one, is that his point, and I think this is extremely valid when thinking about this, is that the stuff that is used inside of a premixed wash tend to be of a higher quality, as I've noted on just on the slide already, and so they do come across as being a little bit more expensive. But the reality is, you get what you pay for, because if you make a homebrew from cheap materials, it's not going to be as good or as effective. You might get a little more frustrated with it than you might with a premix. On the other hand, if you make a homebrew using high quality materials, like for example, if you make a wash out of the Starship filth in a tube, you're going to be happy with it. This is a really high quality paint. The Abteilung 502s are very good. Okay, we'll see you later, Bob. And these oil paints are very good, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive than going into, say, a Michaels or something like that and picking up an oil paint. Now, the one thing is that, oil paints like this will last you a very long time. I mean, this tube is more than 10 years old. This tube is more than 10 years old. And so they will certainly, you basically, you buy one. And I mean, unless you are in an industrial shop that actually makes models, these things are going to last you a long time. So in many respects, I find that the costs kind of even out, but really you do get what you pay for. And so, if you've only used home brews, sometimes it may be worthwhile to kind of check out some of the premix, but I'm going to get to that in a second when I get off the slide, because this is really, in essence, your mileage may vary. Again, if you're using cheap products, you might get results that you're not as happy with, because the cheaper a product is, the pricier a product is, the finer grind of the pigment. So the finer the pigment, the better results you're going to get. And if you're using a low-end oil, their process of making the pigments, they're not as they tend to be a little. They will end up being a bit more grainy. So that's something that we do need to kind of keep in mind. But the big thing is that we're talking about tools in the tool chest. We're not talking about, you must use this. Like, you will not hear from me that if you use this product or don't use this product, then you're not a real modeler. You're not going to hear that from me as well. I've always been an advocate of using the best tool for the job at the time. And and the big thing is that last line, it's your model. It's your model. It's so really. That's the one thing to really keep in mind in all of this, is that it's about what you are creating and what you're comfortable trying and working with. And so, but Sparky, you're in. Glad to see you here, and we've got the chat, and you can catch some on the replay. But we can certainly talk a little bit more about this. That we have, and the big thing is, pay attention to some really wise words down in the chat that we have. It is worthwhile investing in the paints. It's worthwhile investing in the materials that you have, and so these are all kinds of things that you want to keep in mind, so yes, actually, Isaac, you know what? You're absolutely right in terms of all the different products. There are pros and cons. I think the big thing that I kind of struggle with is that if there's this kind of mindset, if you if you use X, Y, or Z, you're not a true modeler. Or if you don't use X, Y, or Z, you're not a true modeler. And the main thing is, what is the end result? What are you trying to achieve? And are you enjoying doing it? And that's part of this is a hobby for us to really enjoy. And like for example, as the Ralph has developed a good library, a good arsenal of techniques that he's pretty comfortable with. But he also he was working at as he was sharing with me. Ralph, I hope it's okay. Is that he happened to be at a store that brought these in, and he really quite likes these and have added them to his arsenal. The whole point is to keep learning. I mean, I've come at this from a sort of a really kind of a bleak angle in terms of what I've learned and picked up along the way, and a lot of it. One of the reasons why I've kind of landed where I have with weathering has a lot to do with I was part of a modeling community that really didn't have a lot of our own. Well, we kind of had our own set ways, but we were always looking out. Particularly when it came to doing scenery for war games, we were looking at model railroaders and kind of going, okay, well, what do they have to share? And then kind of from that, we've kind of branched out. And so part of the discipline is to try different things. In fact, you know what? I'm going to share this. As many of you know, I'm a minister at a United Church here in Calgary, and one of the reasons why I've been so busy is that I have had. Or in July, I had 4 deaths in the congregation, 3 of which I consider to be high profile, and so it's been extremely busy here. I start vacation and I'm going to take a well needed break, and then I'm actually on sabbatical from September on through the end of November. So I've got a lot of free time. So you're going to see more from me, but not until after about mid-August. But one of the gentlemen who died. He trained to be a combat pilot in the Second World War. Now, he never actually got to Europe. So the plane he flew was a Harvard. And for those of you who are Americans, these were also known as a T-6 Texan. This is going to be a project of mine as a way to honor Jim. Because Jim was also he worked as a forward brakeman on CP Rail. And so this is also going to be a way of me learning how aircraft techniques can help model railroading. So you're going to see this one on the channel. And so that's one example. And another one that I've got coming is that one of the other funerals I had to do was the widow of a gentleman in the congregation that I buried a few years ago who was taken prisoner at Dieppe in 1942. And he was a tank driver. And I happened to find the kit of that particular model that I'm going to be doing also as well. But again, as a learning experience on what techniques that I can learn from that I can bring over to model railroading, and to be able to share that with you. So so that's an example of a few things that are coming up. And in addition to that, I have the this gondola from this exact rail gondola, as well as the S4. And I also have another. You might remember the book review that I did from Ammo by Big, but I also have the AK Interactive Train Spotting, and this one again. They're mostly European models, but there's some North American stuff in there. So again, this one is from AK Interactive. It's called Train Spotting, and again, these are techniques from some of the best modelers in the world who are applying for some like that. So we have, that kind of gives you some things that I'm working on. Now I'm just gonna quickly look back through the chat just to see if there's anything there. Are there any questions about what I've managed to cover so far with this? One of the things that I'd encourage is if you're only using premix weathering products, try a homebrew, and if you're only using homebrew, try a premix. That's kind of a little bit of something that I'd like to kind of share. Expand your your tool chest, see what's available. Try something new. Even if you're just doing it on a test model and the like. So that. Now, Bill, I may be donating the finished models to the families, or they might actually live in my office as a way to memorialize them. So it depends. There's actually a war museum here in Calgary, the Canadian Military Museums, that both of these gentlemen were actually fairly active in. So that may also be something that I look at doing, is donating them to the finished models to the museum as well. So that's one possibility, but we're going to see how that goes. So I mean, I think part of it is to say, I've got a list of products, and Ralph, I'm going to put this one out to you. There are, for example, they're using watercolor pencils, but specifically there's, I believe it's AK Interactive has actually recently put out weathering pencils. I know that there's a couple new things coming down the line from Ammo by MIG. By the way, something really interesting from Ammo by MIG is that they're really wanting to teach people how to do this, and they have put out what are called solution boxes that, if you want to do for example, a U.S. Sherman tank from the Second World War, they have a solution box for that, and it comes with, everything you need: brushes, paints, the weathering materials, everything, all in one box. I thought that's kind of an interesting thing, and it comes with a book on telling you how to use the materials to try it yourself. So that's something that's kind of neat to try, as it's done, I think, partly as a teaching tool. The one caveat that I have with some of these the premixed products is they are not magic wands. Maybe if that's one thing to kind of finish on, they're good. They do work as advertised. But you also need to take a little bit of time to kind of learn it. Like, for example, if you see something labeled as chipping fluid, and I remember bumping into someone who was a fairly serious modeler, but had no idea how the chipping fluid actually worked, thought that what you did is you just took it and applied it to model, and it would automatically create a chipping effect. And the answer to that is no. It's basically it's the hairspray technique using a standardized formula. There's another example of a homebrew, hairspray. The trouble is that hairspray varies from country to country, from place to place, and by creating these chipping fluids, it was a way to, at least on paper, put some consistency. But if you got some hairspray you like, use that. Besides, it's probably going to smell nicer. Right. Yes, Ralph. I do have. Let's see. I do have some pan pastels right here that I mentioned. But these are harder to use than they look. But they're good. But you don't use them alone. So. You saw that I had something a little while ago. But anyway, there's some of the materials. So just kind of keeping an eye on the time. We are nearly at an hour, and we haven't. My daughter threatened to put makeup on, but I think we've only had one super chat today. So all I've had to do is blow the little whistle. And no, I don't have a wig. But Megan did threaten something about makeup. But anyway, I think last time was almost humiliating enough with regard to that. But anyway, I guess. I'm just going to take a little bit of time to kind of, if there's any kind of outstanding questions, probably going to be wrapping this up in about 7 minutes. But if there's any other questions, please get them into chat. Yes, last time was certainly fun, but Megan is upstairs. If anybody does a super chat and wants that specifically, I'm going to have to call her down. but anyway, that was I think part of it. But what I can do is any of the questions that you have, either put in chat or alternatively, kind of put it down below. So we'll see you later, Vinny. Realize that like Sunday afternoon seemed to be kind of an odd time to have it, but it's what I had available to me. And as I mentioned before, I am going on vacation. I'm going to be away, so there's not going to be a lot of activity on my channel until probably late August. But that having been said, I've got a lot of things coming. I've got the footage from 2 locomotives and 1 car done. The footage is all done. I have to edit the videos and get them into that. Yes, Will Kling mentioned the Army Painter washes. They're good. The Games Workshop shades are good as well, and they're kind of in the similar category. Those are acrylic washes as opposed to oil washes. So if I suppose if I was to do a semi-regular live chat, this, we could certainly do this here. But part of it is when a topic kind of strikes me. So I think one of the things that I might find helpful, and you can put it here in the chat, you can put it down below. What are some live stream topics that you'd like to kind of cover? In some respects, one of the things that I would like to do is actually to strike up a conversation. So it's not just me talking all the time, because I've used my voice a lot today, and I'm feeling it right about here. And and Isaac, actually, okay, here's a little teaser of something I've got in mind, but part of it's going to take a little bit of time to get together and start it. Isaac Boss asked, are we going to see any non-painting model railroad stuff on this channel? Because, of course, you saw me do the bench work quite a little while ago. The answer is yes. I realized somewhere along the way that I've actually got I'm kind of in a unique position in some respects for some of these model railroading channels, in that my layout is at the really beginning stages, and because the type of thing that I have available to me is that I've just cleared all of the Unitrack off of the table. I'm about to glue down some foam. That's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be doing shortly. The phone is ringing. I'll have to answer that in a little bit. We get spam calls here all the time, so hopefully it's not my parents, but we'll figure that out. But just before I go, the teaser that I'm going to give is I have an idea of doing a series basically from loop to layout of using Kato Unitrack and its unique ability to kind of play with layout sizes. And so I'm going to be working with that. It is in N scale, but the Kato Unitrack has the ability to use some of these larger ones that with HO you can do some similar stuff. They don't have as much track, but you can still do something like this, and the idea is to be able to put that there. So anyway, the that phone call was my parents, so I'm going to have to call them back. And so with that, I think I need to actually sign off now. And so I will, thank you to everyone. Again, put your comments down below. Just kind of keep the chat a little bit open for just a little bit longer. But in the meantime, thank you very much and good luck. I mean, you keep on track.